You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad who has been living in my 1997 Ford van for more than a year. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deliberate Living. I have a very exciting episode for you guys today. I have my friend Logan Foll here, and he is also living a deliberately alternative lifestyle, and so we're going to hear more from him about his story, how he got here, where he came from, pros and cons, and what his future plans are.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? They don't know you like I do.
All right. So I've been on the road for almost 3 years now. I do seasonal gigs, and I'm living in a Ford Econoline from 1990. She's 30 this year. Her name's Caroline.
So she's pretty similar to my van, but a few years older and doesn't have the high top.
And looks like a crayon box.
So why don't you talk a little bit more about that leap that you took to move into the van and take on these seasonal jobs, what that looked like for you, what you were doing beforehand, and why you decided to make this transition.
Sure. So after college, I started working for a PR and marketing department for the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we kind of handled all of the tourism aspects of bringing people to the city, which was fun. And then just started getting really cyclical, and it was just starting to be the same thing over and over and over again. And I had the whole desk job and had to wear the tie and all of those things, and that didn't suit me super well. I've always done things with the hands. So, I started looking into van life. It was starting to get I think it was already pretty popular, but it started to come onto my radar for the first time.
Via social media, or how did you find out about it?
Social media was a good start, and then YouTube was really influential. Me coming from the east side of town, U.S., it was not as prevalent like it is out here. I mean, everyone's in a van or a car, and it's like weird almost if you're not dirtbagging it out here.
Out here being the western side of the United States, we're coming to you today from Arizona, just outside of Tucson. Maybe you can see the cactus behind us if you're watching the YouTube version of this podcast.
Yeah.
And it is way more popular out here in Colorado, Arizona, California. I've noticed a lot of places that I've traveled over the last year or so where the vans seem to collect in certain cities and certain parts of the country.
Yeah, exactly. And with my hobbies, one of them being rock climbing, I started meeting a bunch more people who climbed, and there's a huge intersection between the climbing community and the van community. And so I started meeting more folks who were starting to do that kind of thing. And so it started becoming more tangible and be like, oh, I could actually do this.
Yeah.
So, I watched a ton of YouTube videos and then started looking for vans, and started then going and actually looking at them.
Yeah.
And seeing which ones I liked and which ones I didn't. And when I ultimately stumbled across the van that I have now, I knew instantly that she was going to be mine.
Yeah.
So,
I did too. The second I opened her driver's side door and climbed in for my first test drive, it was like, oh, this is my van.
Yeah.
Hadn't even put the key in the ignition yet.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's it's kind of how it goes, honestly.
Yeah.
So, it was love at first sight with the van, and then I took her on a couple camping trips prior to actually doing a build out, and that was a lot of fun. You learn a lot about what you want and what you don't, and then between my brother, his boss, and then my ex-girlfriend and my brother's wife, we built it out in one weekend.
Nice.
So
Very
we
quick
were
build out.
balls to the wall, just going. We put the subfloor in one day, and then we built everything else out in the other.
Yeah.
So it was pretty wild. I bought the van. So my ex at the time, we or not my ex at the time.
Your ex now. Girlfriend at the time.
Girlfriend at the time, ex now. And we were going to move into the van together and move west.
Okay.
So she had gotten a job in Grand Teton National Park out in Wyoming. Cool. And I found a landscaping gig. I had a landscaping background already. I love to do work with my hands, and it's fun to be outside.
Yeah.
And so we accepted jobs. We quit ours. And I think we bought the van.
Quit working for the PR company.
Yep.
Started moving west towards seasonal jobs. Started
thinking west.
Okay.
We actually quit all of our jobs and all of that stuff like about the same time as we found the van.
Okay.
So it was a little stressful because we didn't have the van, like really nothing was done on it. So it was like, go, go, go. And I don't know, for me, it seemed like if I hadn't pulled the trigger on it, it just wouldn't have happened. Like if I hadn't pulled the trigger on it that year, it wouldn't have been
right.
Like I would have been set.
Yeah.
So, I kind of rushed it and just winged it. And we built it out and we left literally the following week.
Yeah.
So drove it out here to the west side, and it was a great summer. We had a campsite in the actual park in like a staff loop.
Uh-huh.
So we kind of eased into van life.
Right.
So I didn't have as many problems as a lot of the beginner van lifers do, where you have to worry about a bathroom, you have to worry about laundry, and you have to worry about power and all these things. So it was a really good introduction to van life while still doing it. We still lived full time in the van, but we were able to have some of the easier stuff.
You had amenities
supplied. Yeah,
you had amenities through it was really
nice.
The jobs.
Yeah,
that's great. That's awesome. So it doesn't sound like you necessarily had anything before you moved in that like held you back or made you like hesitant about moving in. It was just one of those natural progressions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. And so when you finally did move in and you moved, you didn't necessarily have a transition period except for that move. And then you worked a season in the park. And
I think the only real transition period we had was just trying to get our friends to understand how normal this was for us.
Yes.
Coming from pretty strict religious backgrounds, we had to deal with, moving in together. Of course, that's an issue for parents sometimes. And then on top of that, we were moving very far away from everything we'd ever known. That was the farthest west I'd ever been. I grew up in Illinois running around the cornfields, so I didn't really have a whole lot of exposure to the West besides a couple snowboard trips to Colorado. So it was really diving into the unknown for me. I had no idea what I was signing up for.
So how did your friends and family react when you told them you were going to do it, when they saw the van, when you finally left? Did you get support from them, or did you get like cautionary tales and well-meaning suggestions to maybe think about what you're doing here?
I think that a lot of my friends were like, oh, this will be a road trip. He'll get over it.
He'll come back. He'll come right back. This will be a fun season.
Yeah, and so I don't think they really took me seriously until I dropped a fat stack of cash on a van. And they were like, oh, he's serious. And then when they saw the van, they're like, wow, that thing is cool.
Yeah.
So it helped a little bit that I picked a really cool ride, but then I built it out and just started posting badass pictures of it, and people have slowly started to kind of embrace like that kind of lifestyle since then. And I've started planning trips to where I fly family members out and they spend some time living with me. And that has been really cool. I did one with my mom last year, and I did one with my cousin and my brother this year.
Yeah.
Just kind of trying to like normalize being like, hey, like this is actually a thing.
Yeah.
I'm actually very happy. Yes, I eat well. Thank you, Grandma. And, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. So you moved into the van 2 years ago-ish.
Almost 3.
Almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So how has your experience living in the van changed over 3 years, and how has your experience with your friends and family who don't changed over 2 or 3 years?
So in terms of the second part of that question, friends and family have started becoming slightly more forlorn, but also accepting that I'm probably never going to stop. My East Coast friends are always like, you should come back and see us. We never see you anymore. And I will. If you're watching this, I will. I swear to God. Yeah, I mean, they've been more accepting now that they realize that, I have systems and I haven't died yet. And
yeah.
It's nice.
You've survived almost 3 years in the van, so you're probably not going to die this time.
Yeah, I think once you hit the 1 or maybe even the 2-year mark, people are like, okay, he's really doing this.
Yeah.
It really takes that long for it to become like normal for them.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some validity in that. I think my family and friends have known me to be a very like transient kind of person anyway. Like I've never fulfilled a lease in my life. They're more of suggestions than binding contractual agreements.
Oh yeah.
And so I think when I told them I was going to move into the van, everybody was kind of like, okay, like you have a lot of things that you like to do and like that'll be really interesting. Like, didn't really believe me and were like pseudo supportive because they didn't believe me. And then when I did it, they were like, oh, she's doing it. Okay, interesting. And it's been over a year now and everybody's like, well, this is her life. We'll see her when she drives through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how has the experience changed for you? I mean, you have your systems now.
Well, I've got my systems down. I feel like I cook pretty well. I stopped dating the girl, and so I was able to free up a large amount of space. With that was kind of a significant change where, I had a ton of space, but I also lost a co-pilot.
Yeah.
When you're driving down the road and you're thirsty and your water bottle's empty, it's when you're like, man, I wish I had somebody else like right there. I'd be like, hey, could you just go, like top that off? But at the same time, it's definitely one of those things where when you're dating someone in a van, that is your community versus when you're by yourself, you put a lot more effort into reaching out to the ones who are around you. Yeah. Especially with, the first year, it was just pretty much me and her.
Okay.
And then when we broke up, I moved down to Sedona and did a summer there, and that's when I learned about RTR, Rubber Tramp Rendezvous, out in Quartzsite, Arizona.
That's where we met this year.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's a really great place to meet people who are kind of sharing your values and are willing to do kind of the same thing that you're doing and are thriving. You meet a lot of really cool people who are thriving. Yeah,
I 100% recommend, like, whatever alternative lifestyle you're trying to live, to find events, preferably in-person events that you can go to and meet people who are already doing the same thing you're doing or who are curious about doing the same thing you're doing, whether that be, like maybe a local entrepreneurs event or like a Rubber Tramp Rendezvous lifestyle type event. And if you can't get to one in person, at least getting, in those online forums where you can meet people who are doing the same thing and you can ask those common questions. I'm in a lot of van life forums online, and there's always questions about how do you solve this problem, or how do you stay warm, or is this heater better than this heater? Like logistical questions like that you don't need to reinvent the wheel and you don't need to redo all the research that someone else already has experience with. And then you can connect with like-minded people and make friends who are into the same lifestyle that you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's so many people out there on the road. I think I spent a good chunk of, the first year and a half thinking that I was a little more alone than I actually was.
Yeah.
And when I started, being intentional and reaching out and starting to go to these kind of events and, pay more attention, then I found a ton of people that I overlooked the first time around.
Yeah.
So I would say now I'm thriving a hell of a lot more because I have a lot of really good people in my life now that also bop around the country like I do. So, I think it's important, and one of those things too, as time goes on, you develop those systems, and part of those systems is knowing where to park to be approached. So for me personally, if I park in the Climbing Gym parking lot, I know I'm going to meet a couple people over the course of the next couple days without even having to go into the gym.
Yeah.
Because that's just where people meet to go climb.
Yeah.
And if you just walk up to somebody, some of my best friendships have come out of parking lots. So, highly recommend that.
It should be a bumper sticker.
Yeah. Meet more people in parking lots. So yeah, I mean, just highly recommend. And I know that if you're a little more introverted, it's a little more difficult to make that first step. But if you do, it is worth it. Because I mean, some of the best people are out there.
Yeah,
in a parking lot.
I completely agree. So you made 2 transitions at once. You made the transition from a sticks and bricks life to a home on wheels life, and you made a transition from a Monday through Friday salaried benefited cubicled career to a seasonal type of employment. What was that like?
Great. I love living my life in seasons.
Yeah.
Bit of a snowbird.
You're gonna have to be living in a van.
Yeah.
Especially vans like ours.
Yeah. I also kind of fell in love with the Southwest, and so I like to spend my summers up north in like Montana, Wyoming, those kind of places, and then come back down to the Southwest for the winters.
Yeah.
Between Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, with Utah or Arizona being my favorite.
Yeah.
So seasonal life has been really good for me. I'm a wildland firefighter during the summers. So we do about 2 times as much work as your average human in half the year. So then I don't usually work the other 6 months. So that's been working out really nicely. Just to, basically sign a blank check to Uncle Sam at the beginning of the year and be like, all right, you got me from this time to this time. What do you got? And then we try to make as much money as we possibly can. And then we get laid off in like October.
Yeah.
And then I drive south and get warm.
So it's very all or nothing type lifestyle. You're either 100% on, working for Uncle Sam, doing whatever he needs you to do, wherever he needs you to do it. But then when you're off, you have this incredible freedom that you can go anywhere you want, see anybody you want.
Yeah.
Have your brother and your cousin come live with you in your van. Yeah. 3 grown men in 1 tiny van. That sounds like a joy.
Nightmare. Yeah, and that's transitioning as well. Just playing all winter for 6 months. It sounds fantastic. However, the lack of structure, the lack of purpose, all of those things can also kind of grind on you. So what I've tried to do with this off season is also try to do some pet projects with photography and try to land some, bigger gigs and reach out to people and try to, cultivate, something that I enjoy doing that is creative, kind of in that sense. Because photography is a huge passion of mine, and I've been doing it ever since I stole my mom's camera. And became the official family photographer as a kid. So,
I think that's really interesting that having 6 months off with no schedule and no obligations can be a grind. I think that's something that people don't consider, when they meet you and you're like, oh, you got 6 months off. That's so cool, so sick. You can sleep in as much as you want and stay up as late as you want. You don't have any rules. And that sounds like a dream to so many people. Mm-hmm. But after some period of time, it wears on you.
It does, yeah. So you got to kind of balance it. You've got to, in the off season, do the things that drive you and that you would love to do more of. Mm-hmm. Rock climbing, mountain biking, pretty much into the outdoor things for a lot of people. Knitting, crafting, writing, like anything. Like find something that drives you and that you are genuinely excited to wake up in the morning and do, because it can be hard sometimes to find some of that drive if you're not excited about something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, putting just a little structure in your unstructured lifestyle is definitely a good thing to have.
Giving yourself some of that structure that kind of makes the days go better. Having a little bit of a routine. Yeah. A little bit of something to move towards.
Exactly. Yeah.
So after 3 years living in the van and doing seasonal work, what do you think are your top pros and top cons for each?
Pros. My house is faster than everyone else's.
I don't know about that. I mean, my house might be a little bit faster
than most mobile houses or most stationary houses.
It's definitely faster than stationary houses.
No, I like the fact that I can travel wherever. I don't have to commute because I just drive there, and if I do something and come back and I'm tired, I just go to sleep.
Yeah.
Or if I'm hungry, I eat.
That's one of
Everything
my
is
favorite
there.
Yeah.
Back when I lived in the old stick and brick, I am a little scattered, and I would drive to places, and I'd get there, and I'd realize I'd left something important. I never do that anymore.
No.
A quick con about that is that, unfortunately, now it takes forever to pack for anything, even a day trip, because you always are worried about not having the thing you need because you're so used to rolling around like a turtle with all your stuff on your back.
Everything I need is within arm's reach at all times because I live in a space that's not bigger than my arms. And then, going on a trip is like, but what if I need this? And then you just overpack or you forget something critical that you're not even aware that you need because you just always have it, so you don't think about it.
Yep, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Cons can be that sometimes you don't necessarily feel rooted in a place that you actually are. I know that, when I show up in Tucson, if I have a bunch of van people, then I feel like really rooted in the area. At least the public land areas is the place that I like to spend the most time. And I've got a bunch of friends here too, but it doesn't feel like I necessarily live here. It feels like I'm like vacationing here.
Yeah.
So that can be tricky, having a sense of place and belonging on the road. I know a lot of people will find the places that they find to be kind of their own, and they'll kind of come back to there.
Yeah.
Throughout.
They kind of base there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people who literally just go everywhere all the time, nonstop. That gets exhausting.
Yeah, I think people can do it for short periods, especially when you're new to the lifestyle. People will, be so excited about having that freedom to go anywhere, and then they will, and then, eventually that novelty kind of wears off, and you realize how exhausting it is to be driving every day and waking up in a new place every day, and also it's very expensive. Houses my house gets better gas mileage than stationary houses on foundations, but it's not very good gas mileage for a vehicle. So it gets very expensive to be traveling all the time.
Yeah, precisely. So, it's a good mix. That's where the seasonal thing comes in, having 6 months here, 6 months there, with, trips and things in and around that. And that kind of alleviates some of that stress of community and belonging, because you're able to actually kind of be rooted for a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's been nice. Other cons, I don't have a fancy high top like some people do. This one.
Can't stand up in your own house?
Just can't stand it. So my house is more of a, crack out the old stool and sit on it, or I'm waltzing around on my knees while I'm cooking and stuff. So it's more of a cocoon than like a tent, as it were. The pros of that being it does feel really cozy, and it is, I wouldn't say it's stealthy, but it's easier to just get in and around places. But then the cons being, it's hard on the knees and
in the back.
And
it's hard on your posture.
Yeah. Can't really host people in a van they can't really stand in, because then that's weird. But it's been pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
So I can't complain. Otherwise, I still wouldn't probably be doing it.
I mean, that's fair. If you don't like what you're doing, then you change it. Which I think is something that people in this lifestyle embody a lot more. We're not. None of us are committed to anything.
Yeah.
Except, trying to live a really deliberate life.
Yeah.
Make it fun, make it authentic, make it fulfilling.
I agree.
Do you mind if I ask you personal questions about how much it costs you to live in your van and how much you make doing your seasonal jobs?
Sure.
How much does it cost you to live in your van?
So it's not that expensive. I can fill up the tank for about $70 $60-$70. It's cheaper in Tucson. If you live in California, it's like 1.5 times that.
Yeah, California gas is very expensive. I was just in California last week,
cheap.
And it was not cheap. It cost twice as much to fill up.
Yeah. So, I can fill the tank for about 70, and that gets me about... See if my math is good here. I have 2 tanks, so it makes it a little more difficult to math.
Math is hard.
It is. So I can get about 300 miles between those two.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not moving much, it's pretty cheap. Because gas is probably my biggest expense.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Besides maybe phone bill. Phone bill is higher because I'm on the unlimited plan and stuff. Even splitting it with my brother. But phone bills is about 150, 125, 150, somewhere in there. Insurance is hella cheap because it's 30 years old, so it's like $50 a month.
Does your insurance cover your build out at all, or just the car?
Just the car.
Do you have any insurance to cover your belongings or your build out?
We are winging it on a prayer.
Okay. So I would recommend to anyone who's considering this kind of lifestyle...
Don't do what I do.
Don't do what he's doing. Have insurance that covers the build out. Have a renter's policy that covers all the belongings in the vehicle. I mean, if you have a computer or camera equipment or climbing equipment or any kind of expensive personal belonging, you want to make sure that if something happens, you're covered.
Yep.
So don't do what he's doing, do what I'm doing.
Precisely.
So what would you say your average costs are monthly for living in the van?
Probably anywhere from $500 to $1,200.
Yeah.
I mean, it varies depending on how much I drive and how much I go out and,
Fair.
Things like that. I don't do a lot of going out, but I do a lot of driving.
Yeah.
Especially this winter, I've driven a lot. I think since I left Montana, I've put almost 8,000 miles on the van since October.
That's significant.
So,
So it's February now.
Start dividing that up by how much
months.
it takes to feed my tank, and it's a big number.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest income or budgetary fluctuation every month is gas also. Beyond anything else, it's always gas. Gas can cost me from like $100 a month to like $900 a month, depending on how much I'm traveling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is, like, I don't have to pay for any rent. So while a lot of people are shoveling anywhere from $500 to $3,000 a month, I'm pocketing all of that. And so I just view those rent prices as my driving prices, kind of. It's kind of how I see it. And then I also eat really well. Like, I like to eat. Yeah. So I almost don't even think about how much money I spend on food, but I probably spend somewhere in the $150, $200 range.
A month?
A month. Maybe a little more.
Yeah.
I just like to eat good stuff, And I like to host people and like make food for folks, and so that's kind of a category I don't even track because it just brings me joy.
Yeah, it's worth it regardless of what it costs.
Yeah, and that's something you'll notice when you go into any person's van is you can kind of almost instantly tell what's important to them.
Yes.
So for me, when you walk into my van, you see a pantry and a ton of food.
True fact.
So much food.
I can vouch.
So many cooking utensils and plates and pots, and I have a full wok, which I've been made fun of before by someone here.
Woks
in the room.
take up so much space. Vans are so small.
But the woks come in handy when you need to make an industrial size of potato stir fry. So, you make time and you make space and you pay for the things that you find to be important. So,
absolutely. I think this lifestyle gives you the space to do that because you don't have those expectations of living in a certain neighborhood or having a penthouse suite or like a big house or whatever. You get to really like dive deep into the things that you're passionate about. Yeah. When you start living a deliberately authentic life. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's less about the things you own and where you live. Mm-hmm. It's more about the things you do and who you spend your time with, and
how you
would
spend
prefer
your time.
That way more.
Absolutely.
Huge shift between things over experiences, or really a shift away from things over experiences. Yeah, is what I've been noticing. So,
So you make enough money in the 6 months that you do Wildland to afford $400 to $1,200 a month, $500 to $1,200 a month in van costs.
Yeah, kind of. So the only caveat there is because we do the firefighting thing and they do lay us off at the end of the season, we make about, or at least I made, I can't say for everybody. We also had a really slow year this year. Nothing was really on fire, so we didn't get a bunch of overtime like we usually do. Not a bad thing, not a great thing. You need fire for the ecosystem, and also it's bad for houses. So
it's a tricky thing, fire.
It is a tricky thing. It is a tricky thing. But I made about $30,000 in 6 months. Okay. Which is decent money.
It is decent money. And
especially when you have no expenses. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people listening, if they live in a van, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's pretty reasonable, depending. Because as I've always said, living in a van can cost as little or as much as you want it to. True. It can be just as expensive as living in a mansion in, downtown city somewhere. So I appreciate you giving us specific numbers. I think that's really valuable for people.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, too, is if you can find a job that really takes care of you well while you're doing it. Because for me, we travel a lot to fight fires in other states and other regions. And not only are we, do we not have to pay for any gas, we just jump in the engine and we go. We're paid per diem too. So it's kind of like we're being paid to then live on the road a little bit more. And so there's times, where I'll be gone for 6 weeks at a time and the van is just sitting there. It's not driving. I'm not eating any food. I'm not incurring any costs.
For anything yourself.
So I'm just making money. Yeah. Purely making money, not spending any money on rent. Yeah. Not spending any money on the things that you would when you're at home. Because as soon as I get home, then I just jump in the van and I go somewhere. Yeah. Because road life. But but yeah, it's everybody finds something that works well for them. And for me, it's being completely unavailable for 6 months. So.
Well, to each their own. I mean, some people definitely would have a hard time doing that. I mean, that wildland firefighting is not a job that just anybody can do.
No,
like
but
physically,
you should think about it.
Or mentally, or emotionally, it can be really challenging for people. I can't imagine leaving my dog for 6 months.
Yeah, that's true.
That would be really tough for me.
Yeah.
But do you know what your future plans are for van life? What does it look like for you and Caroline?
Well, I mean, she's still alive and kicking, knock on wood, but so far so good. I don't really see myself changing anything up in the immediate future. I've always kind of wanted to, right now with the setup that I have in the van, I've got it to where I like to live out of the van more than I like to live in it. Yes. A lot of people find it to be very stressful to do that when it's not like built out and like has all the amenities that they need because it's important to them.
Everybody needs different amenities.
It's not important to me. I don't need to stand. I don't need a sink. I don't need, a bunch of the things that other people value. That will probably change. I don't see myself burning out on van life at this point. Yeah. What I see myself doing is burning out on cooking on my knees. Because that's going to get old. Valid. That's going to get old. But as time goes on, I see myself probably wanting to move into a bigger rig. I don't see myself buying any property or houses or anything like that anytime soon. The thought of staying in one place does not sound fun to me whatsoever. Yeah. Even 6 months in one place sometimes can get exhausting. So, I'll probably do more of a live-in situation down the road, especially as I start trying to pick up, more photography gigs along the way, and I'll need a full studio and better battery I'll have to run setup. A business out of better battery setup for sure. But as I start coming down the road, I'm going to need to start making it to where I can actually work and run an actual business out of it versus it just being like a side project where it's, I do something here, I do something there. I do this for fun, kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, that my work was a huge contributing factor in deciding
that this rig was the right one for me because I need this table. You know, I need the ability to like set
Tables
up a
are
desk.
nice.
I need the ability to stand up. My standing desk is a very high class, tech savvy. I put my computer on top of this shoebox here, and then I can stand at a desk, and it's glorious. I'm pretty sure that this table is about almost as tall as your van is on the inside, so it wouldn't work for you. So I definitely understand like your job having an effect on what your van looks like. Yeah. If you could give advice to anybody who's looking into making that transition from a sticks and bricks salaried career type job towards something that is more fluid and more flexible, more seasonal, more mobile, what would you tell that person?
Well, said person listening, wanting to do this kind of thing, I would tell you to make the leap before you're ready, because you never will be. At least for me, it was one of those things where you just start pushing off. It'll be like, well, maybe I'll buy it here, and then I'll have some time to build it out. Just buy the van, and then build the van, and then set sail in the van, or whatever you're going to use. Just go. Because you can always build along the road. My van has made, I've made a few changes along the way that have, been something that works for me. It's not like you're set to any one thing. There's also places out there that allow you to have a ton of tools and you just rip everything out and do it all over again. Yeah. So you can always change your circumstance, but if you're still stuck at home and you're still stuck in that mindset, you're never going to go.
I completely agree. I think that's awesome advice. Where can people find you online if they want to come follow your adventures in Caroline?
All right, so you can follow me at Logan Foll. It's going to be Logan regular spelling and then Foll, Foll, or Fall Exposures. And then Caroline's page is home.sweet.caroline.
Those are all on Instagram.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Logan. I hope you guys really enjoyed this interview with another van lifer, and I will see you next time.
Later.
We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on YouTube, or sign up for email updates every time something new is published. I'll see you next time on Deliberate Living, and until then, keep your life on the DL too.